I'm Larry Ray, President and CEO of American Manganese, Inc., listed on the TSX Venture, ticker symbol AMY, A-M-Y, with proprietary patents in the U.S., China, and South Africa. Our focus is on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. China recently legislated the responsibility for recycling onto their electric vehicle manufacturers and importers. For more information, please visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Rick Ackerman, editor of the newsletter Rick's Picks, his website, rickackerman.com. Welcome back to the show, Rick.
Thanks for inviting me on, Jim.
Bitcoin mania is sweeping the planet. I feel like I'm some kind of DJ. The number one hit sweeping the planet. It's the Bitcoiners. So anyway, what's behind this? And is this really something that if you don't get into it now, you've missed the boat? Or have you already?
No, I think the boat's barely off the wharf, actually. Bitcoin mania is most surely hit in my chat room, in the Rick's Picks chat room. I've got a couple real experts in there. The odd thing is, though, that when I ask one of my few questions about Bitcoin, namely, why is it worth something, no one can really answer that question. And, if you take a couple steps back, you would maybe infer that Bitcoin is worth something because the amount of it is limited. But, that's hardly what would qualify as money. Simply, I could find some rare seashell a mile under the ocean and say, this is worth X amount, and I find 10 more, and I put it out there on the internet and sell these seashells as money, and they get bid up, and because there's only 10 of them, if enough people get in the game and decide, hey, this really is money, it's wampum, then, the shells could be worth $50,000 a piece, just as tulip bulbs were before them in another age. So it's really nutty. I don't think that the 11,000 plus price that was just achieved is going to be the high of this mania, and I wouldn't even deign to predict at this point where it's going. But I will be forecasting Bitcoin prices because my subscribers have pointed me to a pretty good site that tracks Bitcoin with the order book, so you can kind of see everything, supply and demand. And all I needed was a good price history to give accurate forecasts on the swings. I'm looking for we're in a downturn for the last 2 days, and I'm looking for a bottom somewhere around, let's see if I can give you a good number here, just for all your listeners there who are Bitcoin fans. I'm looking for 83.28, and it's currently trading. This is Bitcoin, not Bitcoin Cash. This is the actual original Bitcoin. There are about 20 offshoots listed here at the Bittrex site, but it's currently trading 91226. So I'm looking for about $800 worth of slippage before it finds traction. So it's pretty nutty, but I'm still waiting for someone to explain to me why Bitcoin should be worth anything.
Well, it's hard to use as actual money, but I guess some people might compare it to gold. If you have it stored away, it's not easy to access. You have to do a lot of work to get into it. And you don't have to pay to store Bitcoin, whereas you have to pay to store gold. However, I've also found, though, when there's a premium for using Bitcoin, people will charge you 4 to 6% for a transaction enacted in Bitcoin.
Well, that has to do with the blockchain and the size of the, let's call them data bins, where, the people who track the blockchain receive rewards just for tracking it, and doing that sort of backwards and forwards in the transaction, the sequence of transactions, will tell you where a Bitcoin is. It eliminates the possibility that the possessor of Bitcoin will double spend before anybody finds out. So the fact that it's, I guess, open source, everybody can see every transaction, is really what makes it secure. So I guess, yes, Bitcoin is a secure way of doing transactions, but when you limit the number of informational bits in these blocks, it makes the transaction itself more expensive to accomplish. So this is why they were trying to raise the size of the bin for Bitcoin information. And I seem to recall, though, that it was maybe 70 cents to do a transaction at a minimum some time ago, and that kind of eliminated the Starbucks use of Bitcoin. It was going to be a great way to do something without, to buy and sell things without actually transacting money. But the transaction fee has wound up being a real factor in Bitcoin's evolution.
Well, one of the clients of the radio station that I've interviewed, Glance Pay, they have an app on their thing where you can take a picture of, say, a restaurant bill and pay it automatically. They're connected to Bitcoin, so you use the Glance Pay dollars immediately and the transaction goes through. So if it takes 2 or 3 hours for the actual deal with the Bitcoin to work, the customer doesn't see that. They get the instant transaction. But when you made that payment, that Bitcoin might have been worth, say, $8.50, but by the time the transaction goes through, it could be worth $2. It could be worth $20. For merchants, they don't really know how much they're getting if you pay with it.
Right. That's another thing that argues against Bitcoin as money. The price is so volatile, at least, and even as a store of value, gold has been relatively stable, but how can you call something a store of value if there's just speculative excesses in prices at any given moment? I mean, yeah, for sure, everybody who's been storing their value in Bitcoin has made out like gangbusters in recent months, but it's all, there's no getting around the fact that there's huge risk in it if the reward has been what it's been so far.
Richard Branson, the head of Virgin, accepted Bitcoin as payment for a space ride on his spaceship, which hasn't gone up yet. And that was several years ago when Bitcoin was worth, I would say, probably $10. And so he has made an absolute fortune on anybody who paid with Bitcoin 4 years ago.
Yeah, he's got a flair for promoting, and of course that was a great little sales gimmick. He strikes me as, in a corporate big time way, he's an early adopter, and I saw online there was a bunch of quotes from about 20 different people, including Jamie Dimon, but also Richard Branson, and he was one of about 3 or 4 of these worthies who were saying full steam ahead with Bitcoin. It looks great to me, but it looks pretty scary too. I mean, realistically speaking, it was trading 11,000 some just a couple days ago, or yesterday, I'm sorry, and trading 9,000 now, and it's pretty nutty.
How would you rate the risk getting into Bitcoin?
Well, if you do it scientifically, I don't think it's going to be risky. I'm used to trading. I think of Amazon as pretty risky when you're trading $1,000 stock, especially using stop limit orders to get in and out of positions. You see just how dangerous it is. I've never traded anything with this value. The swings are so wicked, and I'm looking at the order book at Bittrex. The price action is so rabid that just the slippage factor can crush you. So I would look to trade it myself. I use a tactic called mechanical trading, which is never a limit. It's always a limit bid or offer, never a stop entry, a stop, market stop or something like that. So I'm always I would be buying Bitcoin when it falls to a particular price or shorting it when it rises to a price. So that's the only way I can see trading it. And the trading will kind of smooth itself out when the CME product comes out sometime in December. They're about to enact a Bitcoin futures contract, and that's going to have a great deal of significance for the market. I think it will help stabilize Bitcoin's price action. But if the volatility of Bitcoin comes down, I think it's because the futures contract will give enough people access to trading that it's going to send it up. So it's going to be kind of a one-way thing with probably occasionally incredible swoons.
A lot of people have compared Bitcoin to the tulip mania that swept Europe back in the late 1600s. Do you think it's the same?
Yeah, I do. You know, at the time, people would trade valuables, property equal to the value of a house. You know, the transactions were sometimes on the ledger as barrels of wine, casks of wine, or, you know, huge quantities of butter for a tulip bulb. And at the apex, people were paying for a single rare tulip bulb as much as they might have spent buying a house. So at some point someone realized, hey, these are just tulip bulbs, and I get a feeling that revelation's going to hit in Bitcoin, although the blockchain technology that underlies Bitcoin is, I'm sure, going to be useful for many other types of things, such as, for one, keeping secure medical records or keeping any type of information secure.
We'll have more with Rick Ackerman right after the break.
I'm Bill McWilliam, president of Cascadero Copper, CCD on the TSX Venture Exchange. Cesium is one of the world's rarest metals with a growing industrial demand. Drilling is underway on our Tehran property in Argentina to prove up a cesium resource. Cascadero's patent-pending leach process has the potential to make Cascadero the lowest cost supplier of cesium in the world. Visit our website, cascadero.com, or phone us at 604-924-5504.
Cypress Development Corp's flagship lithium project is located just east of Albemarle's Silver Peak mine in the heart of Clayton Valley, Nevada. A 12-hole exploration drill program for lithium-enriched claystone on Cypress's 100% controlled properties is now underway. Cypress Development Corp trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol CYP, the pink CYDVF, and on Frankfurt's C1Z1. For more information, please visit our website, cypressdevelopmentcorp.com.
Welcome back. We're chatting with Rick Ackerman. Rick, with everybody focusing on Bitcoin, is that taking investment funds away from traditional things like the stock market or gold and silver?
Taking it away from gold and silver for sure. And I can say that because the interest level in bullion is very much reflected in my chat room. I've got a bunch of subscribers who have always been interested in gold, even if somewhat despairing about the price action since 2011 when gold peaked just above $1,900. So the conversation has shifted to these glum discussions of gold's performance on a given day, or lack of it, to Bitcoin, and I can see more and more people in the ranks of my subscribers getting drawn into Bitcoin. And of course, some of them are off on the sidelines saying, you guys are crazy, but then the few true believers are in there really trying to make the case whenever they can that Bitcoin is the real deal and it's here to stay.
Is it because people who are into gold and silver are kind of adrenaline junkies? They like to see big movement and they get excited with it. So Bitcoin really would satisfy that little addiction to adrenaline.
Well, the thing that most feeds the mania is that some people who were in early have made huge, huge money. And that is always, you just put that story out, and it is out there everywhere, and it makes the people who were very skeptical of Bitcoin, I don't think it makes them look foolish, but it does, even there are no fools in the investment world, really. They're just, they're, let's say, people who have missed great opportunities, and however much you want to badmouth Bitcoin, you got to kick yourself for not being in it just the same. And that's the trait of a savvy investor, someone who can say, well, I hate this stuff. This is crackpot money, but as long as I can make money with it, why not? So they've sort of missed the boat, and you can bet they'll be in there eventually, when Bitcoin is $40,000 or something like that.
And
incidentally, main insight into Bitcoin, or the chicanery of it, was it came with a tour of a property owned by a company called Rye Patch. Most of the gold mining they do is a couple hours outside of Reno, and I went out there with a group that included Al Carlin and a few other guys, and we got to tour their several Reno properties, and it's a great operation. They've acquired some mined sites that essentially give them a long, continuous stretch of gold-filled hills there near Reno. And we were there just coincidentally on the day they did a pour. So this was the kind of fruits of the labor. The operation, I think, employs was about 168 employees at that time, and they had some pretty big machinery. There were about 40 pieces on the site with tires about 3 times as big as we are. And so to dig gold out of the ground, to sort of crush rock, mountains, literally mountains of rock, and produce just a few ounces of gold, it is an enormous undertaking. It takes a huge input of labor. It takes very expensive machinery. It takes a lot of energy, so the mining operation, a true mining operation, is really very capital intensive. So here we were witnessing this pour, and it was essentially everything all the gold that they dug out of the hills over a period of 6 or 7 days, and it came down to 2 gold ingots that I think were maybe 80% pure, and they weighed a little less than 50 pounds apiece. So, when you factor in all that it cost Rye Patch to get this little bit of gold, you see that it's an enormous undertaking. So when people describe the geniuses who were been sitting at their computers and essentially adding more and more processing power to their computers to produce Bitcoin, you see it as a very phony kind of mining operation. It really isn't the real deal. When you compared to the Rye Patch, just plugging in a few computers and trying to squeeze some Bitcoin out of them is that's not my idea of work. So even though supposedly it's getting harder and harder to create Bitcoin because the supply has been limited to 21 million coins, and of course, demand alone then will sort of determine the value.
We'll have more with Rick Ackerman right after this.
Glance Technologies owns and operates Glance Pay, a disruptive mobile payment technology now live in 16 cities in Canada and about to launch in the U.S. With revenues up 664% in the last quarter, Glance Technologies has the potential to be a worldwide leader in an industry projected to grow to $1.3 trillion in 3 years. Glance Technologies stock symbols are GLNFF in the U.S. and GET in Canada. Find out more at glancepay.com.
Keep informed. Receive our weekly recap of thought-provoking articles, podcasts, and radio delivered to your inbox for free. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage, HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're chatting with Rick Ackerman. Rick, Senator John McCain says he's going to support the Trump tax bill in the Senate. It looks like it's likely going to go through. Is that one of the reasons why the stock market right now seems to be continuing its climb to the top at some point?
Yeah, I think that that the tax reform bill was so idiotic. It's so loaded with incredibly stupid things that a chimpanzee could be innovating better reform than we've had out of Congress. That's exactly the sort of thing that Wall Street loves. They take the word tax reform and they sort of put it in a vacuum without considering what's happening, without considering that, for instance, the home builders are dead set against it because it's definitely going to bring real estate valuations down if mortgage interest is no longer deductible. As a relatively recently divorced guy, I can tell you that the provision that would make alimony no longer tax deductible for the husband and tax free to the wife, that is going to be a killer. I mean, fortunately it's not retroactive, but it's the stupidest thing I've ever heard, because in the first place, it's only going to raise, supposedly over the next decade, maybe $1.5 billion, something absurd. So it's I don't know how that got in the bill, but that's the way Congress crafts its bills. So Wall Street is completely detached from what's in this bill. The fact that it's going to it's not simplifying anything, because if this were tax reform that were simplifying things, we'd understand what the hell is in it. But nobody really does. There's so many provisions that are being argued one way or the other, lobbied one way or the other, that it's just like every other tax reform bill before it. It's garbage. So again, Wall Street, too much of a bad thing is never enough on Wall Street. So the more garbage that's in this bill, the more bloated the idea of tax reform becomes. So yeah, the stock market is rallying on the prospect of tax reform, even though it's just junk reform.
Well, most of the stuff I've seen, the tax reform is great for big business and probably bad for everybody else, but big business is what is on the stock exchange.
Yeah, I mean, it will lower the effective tax, the corporate tax rate, and I know I operate as a subchapter S. I think my tax rate will be 25%, which will, at the margin, and I don't think that will much affect what I'm paying in taxes. As for lowering the corporate rate, I mean, I'm in the camp that says corporations shouldn't pay any taxes at all. They're not people, and essentially, the company, if it doesn't pay taxes, then it gets to disperse its profits in the form of dividends or whatever. The taxes can be paid by shareholders. I don't think there's any reason why a corporation should pay taxes. It should be taxed at the level of people. So it's not as though, when you talk about those greedy, evil corporations, there's no such thing. There's only the people who work for it, who make money. They're the shareholders, the executives who administer the companies. So I would ask the question, why should they be taxed? So lowering the rate to whatever it is, 20%, is going to be favorable. But I guess the big thing is trying to get companies with huge capital surpluses or cash surpluses to repatriate them to the U.S. That'll be far more significant, really, than any moderate reduction in the marginal tax rate.
And Doug Casey said, don't forget to, anything that's good for the U.S. economy, because they're Canada's biggest customer, is good for the Canadian economy.
Yeah, that's for certain. I haven't actually followed the Canadian buck too closely lately, but if the U.S. benefits in any way from tax quote-unquote reform, so will Canada.
Rick, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Well, thanks for inviting me on, Jim. Always a pleasure.
My guest has been Rick Ackerman, editor of the newsletter Rick's Picks, his website, rickackerman.com. You're listening to HowStreet.com radio. Find us on Twitter at HowStreet. Our YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. Questions for the show or our guests can be sent to info@HowStreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Thanks for listening.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.